Okay, so picture this, right? It's 1937, the golden age of aviation. Like daring pilots are pushing the boundaries of what's even possible, and everyone's just like captivated by it.
Yeah.
And right there in the thick of it is Amelia Earhart, this woman. I mean, talk about breaking records and just like redefining what it even means to be a female aviator.
Mhm.
But then in the middle of this crazy attempt to fly all the way around the world,
Mhm.
she just vanishes. Like poof, no trace. And it becomes this mystery that's like obsessed people for generations.
Yeah, it's a story with like all the pieces, right? You've got this daring adventure. You've got a main character who's just like magnetic, and then boom, this sudden disappearance that nobody can explain. And for like almost 100 years, people have been trying to like put the pieces together, figure out what really happened to Amelia Earhart.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today, this whole enduring mystery. We're gonna look at Amelia's life, her whole career, the final flight, and even some new evidence that might finally give us some answers. And to help us navigate all this, we've got a very special guest. Joining us today is, well, she's a pilot who was so inspired by Amelia that she not only, flew around the world herself, but she even shares a name with the icon Amelia Rose Earhart. Welcome to the deep dive.
Oh, it's so great to be here. Amelia Earhart's story has always been like really special to me. She was such a pioneer, and her whole legacy, I mean, it still inspires me today.
No, I bet. Now, before we get into the really mysterious stuff, let's go back a bit, right? Back to Amelia's life and how her career started. She wasn't always a pilot, was she?
Oh, no, no. She had a bunch of different jobs before she found like her true calling with flying. She did social work or nursing, even fashion design. It's like she had this adventurous spirit right from the beginning, always pushing limits, trying new things.
There's that story about her building a roller coaster right off the roof of her house as a kid. Sounds like she was a bit of a daredevil even back then.
Totally. And that fearlessness, it really helped her in the world of flying. But it's interesting, right? Because she didn't actually discover flying until she was in her 20s.
So it wasn't like love at first sight with airplanes.
Well, it seems like once she took that first flight, she was hooked. Like that was it. It was like she'd found what she was meant to do, and from then on, her career just like took off. I mean, just 5 years after Charles Lindbergh made his famous flight across the Atlantic, Amelia became the first woman to do it solo in 1932. It was an incredible thing to do. Just so much skill and bravery.
Especially with the planes and navigation they had back then. Right. I mean, can you imagine using the stars,
Yeah.
with sextants and charts to find your way across the ocean? It blows my mind.
It really does. And you have to remember, back then, women weren't really, expected to be doing things like that. They were supposed to stay on the ground. But Amelia, she just blew past all those expectations in a huge way. And her achievements, they meant something to everyone, not just, people interested in flying. She became the symbol of like what women could do, proof that they could achieve anything they set their minds to.
And she didn't stop there either. She went on to set more records, like flying from Oakland to Honolulu and across the whole U.S. She became a global celebrity.
Yeah.
Got 2 ticker tape parades in New York City. It's wild to think about how big of an impact she had, not just as a pilot, but as a cultural icon.
Yeah, absolutely. Amelia's story, it just grabbed everyone's attention in a way that like few other pilots ever did. She was the symbol of adventure, of like pushing the limits and doing what people thought you couldn't do. And I think that's a big part of why people are still so fascinated by her story today.
So with all these achievements, I mean, she had done so much, right? But then she sets her sights on something even bigger, flying all the way around the world. In 1937, she starts what would be her final flight, this 29,000-mile trip around the equator. Why choose such a difficult route?
Well, Amelia wasn't one to back down from a challenge. She wanted to like see how far she could push the limits of what was possible with flying. And flying around the equator, it had a whole different set of challenges. It was longer, covering more of the world. It meant flying over huge stretches of ocean, which meant needing really precise navigation and careful planning.
And this was all in a Lockheed Electra 10E, right? A twin-engine plane. Pretty advanced for the time, but still a far cry from what we have now. Can you tell us a bit more about the Electra, what it could do?
The Electra was a good Plain, sturdy, reliable, for its time at least. But
Yeah.
but it had its limits. It could fly maybe 4,000, 5,000 nautical miles before needing to refuel. So Amelia and her navigator, Fred Noonan, they had to plan those fuel stops very carefully. And of course, they were still using celestial navigation, right? Which meant like tons of calculations and really understanding the stars.
Man, it's hard to imagine, having to navigate over those huge oceans with just a sextant and the stars.
Mm.
I mean, one wrong calculation and
Oh, yeah. And don't forget, radio communication back in the 1930s wasn't exactly reliable. Lots of static interference, so talking to people on the ground, getting updates, it was tough, especially over long distances.
so they were basically on their own once they took off, relying on their skills and each other to make it across the Pacific. And as we know, this part of the journey, this is where things go wrong.
So from Papua New Guinea, they took off for Howland Island, this tiny little island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It was going to be a key refueling stop on their way to Honolulu.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures of Holland Island. It's like unbelievably small and remote, like barely 2 miles long and not even a mile wide. I mean, even with the navigation stuff we have today, it'd be tough to find.
Oh, absolutely. And back in 1937, trying to find a little island like that and the vastness of the Pacific, I mean, that was a seriously daunting task. Think about it. Trying to pinpoint this tiny speck of land from thousands of feet up with nothing but a sextant and the stars to guide you.
It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. And on top of that, they were flying in some pretty rough weather. I think I remember reading about thunderstorms in the area.
Yeah, yeah. The weather reports at the time, they did say there were scattered thunderstorms along their route, which could have made it even harder to see, made navigation even trickier. And then there's another thing that might have played a role in their disappearance. To get as much fuel as possible, they decided to take out a heavy radio receiver from the Electra.
So they were trading communication, being able to talk to people for more fuel. That's a risky move.
It was a calculated risk for sure, but one that could have had really bad consequences. It meant that their ability to communicate with ground stations, to get updates on the weather, I mean, all of that was really limited.
And then as they got closer to Howland Island, the radio transmission started coming in. The Itasca, that was the Coast Guard cutter stationed near Howland. They were supposed to help Amelia land, and they started picking up these transmissions.
Yeah, the Itasca was getting these broken transmissions from Amelia. You can hear it in her voice, the strain as she's trying to connect to figure out where she is. She's saying they're low on fuel, circling around Howland, but they can't find the island.
Man, that must have been terrifying for Amelia and Fred.
Yeah.
Realizing that they were running out of time, running out of fuel, lost in the middle of the Pacific, and for the people on the Itasca listening to that, knowing they were so close, but couldn't do anything to help. I can't even imagine.
It's a truly harrowing situation, and those radio transmissions they just give you this incredibly vivid picture of how desperate things were getting in the cockpit of the Electra, and then silence, nothing, no more transmissions from Amelia.
So the Itasca, they immediately launched the search and rescue, and soon the Navy joined in, sending out ships, aircraft, just scouring the area. It was the biggest air and sea search in history at that point.
Yeah.
They covered something like 250,000 square miles of ocean.
But even with all that effort, nothing. No trace of Amelia, no Fred, no Electra. They just vanished. And that's what's fueled all the speculation, the debates, all these theories trying to explain what happened to them.
Right. Some people think they ran out of fuel, crashed into the ocean. Others say maybe they landed on a nearby island, like Gardner Island, which is called Nikomaro now. Maybe they survived there for a while as castaways. There's even a theory that the Japanese captured them.
It's really amazing the fact that after all this time, there are still so many different theories about Amelia's disappearance. I think it shows just how powerful that mystery is and how much we want to find answers, to solve the puzzle, especially when it involves someone like Amelia.
You mentioned the point of no return before. Could you explain what that is, like in terms of flying, and how it might have played into Amelia's situation?
So in aviation, the point of no return is basically the point during a flight where you don't have enough fuel to turn around and go back to where you started. It's a huge decision for pilots because once you cross that point, you're committed. You got to reach your destination, no turning back.
So for Amelia, once they passed that point, they were basically flying on borrowed time, hoping to find Howland Island before they ran out of fuel.
Yeah, exactly. And if they couldn't find Howland, their options were pretty bad. They could try to ditch the Electra in the ocean, hope to be rescued, or try to land on a nearby island if they could find one.
Both pretty risky,
Yeah.
especially with the communication problems they had, and just how huge the Pacific is. It was a desperate situation.
Oh, totally. And the fact that we still don't know for sure what happened to Amelia and Fred all these years later, that just makes the whole story even more intriguing, you know?
And now there's this new thing that's got everyone talking again about Amelia's fate. Just last year, 2023, the Deep Sea Vision team, they captured a sonar image, and it looks like it could be a plane wreckage on the seabed near Howland Island.
Oh, yeah, that's a fascinating discovery. It's got everyone in the aviation and exploration world really excited. Could this would this be the Electra finally found after all this time?
That's what we all want to know. But I've heard some experts are saying we should wait and see, because the sonar image doesn't match the Electra perfectly.
Right. There are some differences. The shape of the wreckage and it seems like the Electra's engines, those big radial engines, they're missing. But we got to remember this wreckage has been down there for almost 100 years under incredible pressure in a super corrosive environment.
So it's possible that the wreckage is just like changed, right?
Right.
Like warped and stuff
Right.
over time. So it's hard to say for sure just from the sonar image whether it's the Electra or not.
Exactly. And where they found this wreckage, that makes things even more complicated. It's deeper than where the Titanic sank. So exploring it, trying to recover anything, I mean, that's going to be extremely difficult.
But the Deep Sea Vision team, they're planning another expedition, right? So to go down there and take a closer look, they've got all this high-tech stuff like remotely operated vehicles, ROVs. Those can go down to those depths and get really good images.
It's pretty exciting, and it just shows that even after all these years, the search for Amelia, it hasn't stopped. Her story, it refuses to be forgotten.
And speaking of continuing the search, you flew around the world yourself, Amelia Rose Earhart.
Yeah.
Back in 2014. You followed in your namesake's footsteps. What was that like? Flying over the same oceans, the same continents that Amelia did?
Oh, it was incredible to retrace her route, to see the world from the same perspective. It was humbling and exhilarating, and it really gave me a much deeper understanding of the challenges she faced, the courage she had, and how powerful her story really is.
You mentioned that you circled over Howland Island during your flight,
Oh.
77 years to the day after Amelia disappeared. Can you describe that? What was it like emotionally?
Oh, it was so emotional. Just circling over this little island lost in the middle of that huge ocean. I couldn't stop thinking about Amelia and Fred and what their final moments must have been like. It was this powerful reminder of the risks they took, the mysteries they left behind, and the incredible legacy they inspired.
Man, it gives me chills just thinking about it. And you've taken that connection with Amelia even further, right? You started the Fly with Amelia Foundation. It gives scholarships, mentors young women who want to get into aviation. Can you tell us a bit more about the foundation? What its goals are?
The Fly with Amelia Foundation, it's my way of honoring Amelia's legacy. It's about helping other women achieve their dreams of flying. We provide financial help, mentorship to young women who share Amelia's passion for aviation. We want to empower the next generation of female pilots and make sure that Amelia's spirit of adventure lives on.
That's amazing. It's a fantastic way to keep her legacy alive. But let's get back to the mystery for a second.
Yeah.
What do you think about this new sonar image? Do you think it could be the Electra?
I think there's definitely a chance. I mean, it's not, absolute proof, but it's certainly interesting enough that we need to investigate more. The Deep Sea Vision team, they're the experts. They've got the technology to really explore this site. I'm really hopeful that they'll be able to give us more answers,
Yeah.
Maybe even recover some pieces that could tell us for sure if this is Amelia's plane or not.
It's kind of wild to think that, after all this time, there's still a chance we might actually find her plane.
Hmm.
And finally get some answers about what happened to Amelia.
Hmm.
But even if this doesn't lead anywhere, the Amelia Earhart's story, it's had such a huge impact on aviation, on exploration, just on our culture.
Oh, absolutely. Her story, it goes way beyond just flying. She became the symbol, right, of courage, determination, of going after your dreams. She challenged what everyone thought women should do and inspired generations of people, especially women, to reach for the stars, literally and figuratively.
And then the mystery of her disappearance. That just made her even more legendary. It sparked all these books, articles, documentaries, even movies, all trying to figure out what happened on that flight.
I think it's because we're wired to be curious, aren't we? We love to solve puzzles, and maybe we need to believe that even when something tragic happens, there's a chance we can find the answer.
Yeah, and it's more than just solving a puzzle, right? It's about remembering Amelia and what she did, and letting her story keep inspiring us.
One thing that always strikes me about Amelia is how her story connects with so many different kinds of people. She wasn't, just a pilot. She was a writer, a poet, she designed clothes, she was a social worker. She lived her life with this passion, this curiosity that went way beyond any one job.
A true Renaissance woman, like they say. And I think that's another reason why people are so drawn to her story. She reminds us that we don't have to, be just one thing. We can explore. We can try different things, follow our passions, and just live an adventurous life.
And that it's okay to take risks, to push those boundaries, to not just accept things the way they are. Amelia, she wasn't afraid to go against the grain, to break down those walls and make her own path.
She really did pave the way for so many women who came after her in aviation and in other fields that people thought were just for men. And her legacy, it still inspires us today.
It really does. And the work that you're doing with the Fly with Amelia Foundation, it's such a great example of that. You're helping to keep her spirit alive by helping young women follow their dreams of flying.
It's an honor to be a part of that, and to know that Amelia's story will keep inspiring people for years to come. But before we wrap things up, I want to go back to that big question that we've been wondering about all this time. What happened to Amelia Earhart? Does this new evidence, does it give us hope that we might finally solve this mystery?
I think it does. We need to be careful, wait and see what the investigation shows us. But this discovery, it's rekindled that hope that maybe, just maybe, we can find Amelia's plane and finally have some closure. But even if this doesn't work out, the search for answers, it's not going to stop. Amelia Earhart's story, it just won't let us forget. It's a story about courage, about ambition, and about the power of a mystery that just won't go away.
Well said. And thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the mystery of Amelia Earhart. It's been fantastic having you on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk about Amelia and the incredible legacy she left behind.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this amazing journey. We hope you found this deep dive into Amelia Earhart's story as fascinating as we did. And hey, if you want to keep exploring, keep learning, keep those adventure spirits alive, don't forget to subscribe to The Deep Dive. We'll keep bringing you the stories, the insights, the conversations that help you make sense of the world around us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep that adventurous spirit alive.